4 I's that will help you with financial efficiency. The first one, I know everyone in here is really happy with what's going on in the government right now, so this might be a little controversial, but don't tip the government. Stop overpaying the IRS. You're a business owner if you're in this room. You have a Renatus business, right? It's like you get tax deductions. Stop tipping the government. Pay for high quality CPAs. It's worth it. Now, unfortunately, sometimes they're hard to find, but I know there's great ones within the Renatus program, right? We know where the great ones are as well, so it is worth it. And think about the 3 measures of worth every time you go to spend money. The first measure is price. And people that stay broke only focus on price. They just think, okay, that's expensive. Sometimes things are really cheap that are extra expensive. Like, who flew here? Show of hands, who flew here? What if there was an airline that said, we will get you there for $2 because what we've done is just cut out maintenance. We don't train our pilots, as a matter of fact. But who thinks that's too damn expensive of a flight to actually get on, right? Like, that one's obvious, but somehow it's more subtle out there in the world. So price, unfortunately, has been the main predicator of poverty. People that are only price conscious are value deaf, they're value blind, and unfortunately they stay stuck in a wrong type of framework. They're in scarcity. But there's this other place over here called abundance. Abundance exists. It doesn't mean that we frolic through and we levitate and float and everything always goes our way. Abundance just means that there's answers, there's innovation, there's human ingenuity, and it's not a finite pie. If someone gets $1, they get to spend that dollar again, and it just gets to keep circulating as part of velocity. So the first way to increase velocity, I just hit puberty right there in front of you guys. I've been waiting for so long. It's weird to have a beard and gray hair and still not hit it, but it happens. I'll just drink a little water here. All right. So financial efficiency is going to increase velocity. The price consciousness and the deafness to the other 3 measures of worth. The second measure is cost. Cost is the economic impact. There are things that are really high priced. What if I had to pay $10,000 for a tax attorney? That seems really high of a price, right? But my tax attorney, by the way, last year alone saved me 6 figures. We set up a Wyoming corporation that avoided Utah state tax on book sales and other intellectual property that was not sold in the state of Utah. He helped me acquire a bunch of artwork several years ago that now I'm able to donate at appraised value. So for every $1 I spent on the artwork, I've been getting $2 back in tax credits and money back into my pocket. So I got paid for owning the art essentially. So whatever that price was on him, the fact that he saved me $500,000 over the last several years, I don't mind the $10,000 because the cost was actually 0 or less than, it paid me. The third measure of worth, there's price, there's cost, and the third measure is value. Value is your overall feeling of satisfaction. Why in the world are we being trained, taught, and educated that if we just live a crappy life now, that one day, someday, it's going to get better? If we sacrifice it, that's somehow good. Look, in a spiritual sense, sacrifice could mean to be sacred about something. I get that. But in a financial sense, sacrifice means eliminate, cut out, don't spend. And if we don't spend on the right things, we get stuck in the wrong place. Yeah, I wasn't looking for an applause, but I'll take it. I've never said those exact words before, so hopefully someone wrote that down, they'll repeat it to me, and then I'll share it again with another crowd. So, 3 measures of worth: price, cost, value. Think value-based spending, not budgeting. Is it valuable to you? You are your greatest asset. So if you take care of yourself, you're going to have more to give to the world. Anyone met that domestic engineer? That has exhausted because they do 100% of everything for their kids. They gain weight, they don't have purpose, they get very upset, but they're doing everything in the name of the kids. That's where sacrifice has gone wrong. If you don't take care of yourself first, you don't have as much to give. So you got to get economically independent. Take care of your finances and you have more to give the world. You've got to take some time off, relax, rejuvenate. And Renatus people, I went to the Dominican with them. You should have seen John O'Neill chanting from the pool. I mean, it was an awesome time, amazing people, right? So you got to take care of yourself. You're the asset. Your ability to earn is the #1 factor that's going to drive your wealth. Scrimping and saving, pinching pennies till you get blisters on your fingers, you can become the millionaire next door. Which is that miserable, broke Ebenezer Scrooge story of the person that drives the jalopy vehicle, doesn't turn on the air conditioner in the summer or the heater in the winter, and then when they die, their kids blow their money within 3 years. Right? There's a different path. Velocity is part of that. So, save on the IRS. You've had other speakers on that. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. The second I, though, is save on interest. If you're a bank or you're a financial institution, what do you want from people? You want money how often? Yeah, all the time. And how long do you want to hold on to it for? As long as possible. And how much do you want to give people when they come to take a withdrawal? The game is freaking rigged against us. Listen to that. We don't have to follow those rules. We just have to understand them and utilize these institutions to our advantage. What about rigging the game in your favor? What about cutting out the middleman? What about having a structure where you have your own financing system to buy your real estate and buck the banking system over time? Where you don't have to, good credit, bad credit, doesn't matter as much because you could access your money and pay it back when and how you want. I started to do that when I was 19 years old. I call it my never fail me strategy. It's part of cash flow banking. And so the second I is interest. And when I started to implement cash flow banking, I didn't have to borrow from the banks for a lot of things. From when I bought my cars, when I bought businesses, when I bought a fourplex, it was like the, I don't know, pretty early on, but up here in Ogden, there was a bankruptcy that happened with the developer. So there was 2 plots of land that could each hold 2 townhomes. So I ended up buying it out, developing it, and learned I didn't want to be a developer, by the way. But I used my cash values to finance it, to do the down payments when the long-term financing came in, and I used the cash flow to put it back. And I've got a surprise for you on that. I usually don't talk a lot about that strategy. So I just want to let you know, I'm not the only author on this book. So I called my co-author last week and I said, this is a big ask. We've never shared the stage before, but wouldn't it be cool if you came to the Renatus annual event and took 15 minutes to share the core philosophy and what would the Rockefellers do? Yeah. Yeah. He's backstage right now. I figure some of you guys have heard me before, but you've never heard from him. So as soon as I get, let me get through the 4 I's, and then I'm going to bring Michael Isom up here. And let me just tell you this story about Michael. Michael, I met him when I think I might have been 19 or 20 years old, just starting in financial services. We were starting to get the market to go down, and now it's the year 2000. And he and I were at my kitchen table in Cedar City, Utah, of the townhome that I owned. Actually, that was my first real estate investment, my townhome as a college student. I got a champ loan, no money down, and I bought it for $96,000, sold it for $175,000. I probably would have sold it for $250,000 had I known Bob and Renatus back then, but at least I, did something. So we're sitting at the kitchen table, and I was like, dude, I got to go face my family, my friends, and the parents of my friends and say, I don't know what I'm doing, throwing their money in the stock market. I don't know when the market's going to go up. I have no control over it. I got paid a commission. I've never even met the money managers. I could only tell them the top 10 stocks because I haven't even seen all 500 or 600 or 200, depending on the fund, stocks that are inside of that. And I was in pain, and he was kind of coaching me through that. And I was like, cool, I'm going to go have this conversation. That was a transformative, pivotal moment in my life. To go face people as an arrogant, I know it's shocking to believe, but I was arrogant at the time. My kids last night, there's a place here in Layton called Dartside where you shoot darts on obstacle courses, and on the way up, Roman, my 9-year-old, says, how did you meet Mom? I said, oh, interesting story. One, I was driving with her brother from Cedar City, Utah to Logan, Utah. It's about a 5-6 hour drive. I don't know how long it is, but it's a long drive. So we stopped over at his parents' house in Salt Lake. And when we got there, Derek told his sister, hey, there's my friend here. He does well with the ladies. He said something to that degree. Now, let me just rewind just 1 second. On the way up, Derek actually spoke these words to me. He said, why do girls tell me I'm good looking? I know I'm good looking. Okay, he said these words. I'm a freshman in college. In my head, I was like, I would love to hear girls tell me that. That would be awesome. I was pretty uncertain of myself. But he was a senior, confident. So when he sees his little sister and says, hey, there's a guy here you should meet, he does well with the ladies. She's like, here's a guy who thinks he's God's gift to women, and I will do everything to show him that he's not, by giving him the cold shoulder and not saying a word to him. That's how I met your mom, kids, right? That's what I'm telling you. So anyway, the story gets a lot better after that, but I just thought it would be, like I was arrogant at the time. I really thought like I had this figured out. I was making people a bunch of money. Now all of a sudden that's collapsed. My entire world is like, wait, they're losing. What do I tell them? And I don't want to use it in the long haul and all the other nonsense that's being said. And so that's when I actually went to them face to face and said, I think it's time for you to get your money out of the market and do one of two things. Number one, find a different advisor. Or number two, wait for me to figure out something better. Which, by the way, was the catalyst of me figuring out the 4 I's. Because my entire question was, what could we do in the world of finance and get guaranteed results? You're not even allowed to use that word usually, right? Like I'd have to whisper it. I wonder how we could get guaranteed results. I didn't want to end up in jail. You can't use the word. But what I found out was if you save tax, that's a guaranteed return. Guaranteed money in your pocket. Number two, if you could save on interest, which cash flow banking is the ultimate tool to do that, and if you could earn interest rather than pay it, that was going to have a massive difference, especially if you could do it with the very place the bank was stashing the reserves on your money, where they're getting 5 or 5.5%, and you're getting less than 1%, and it's laughable with the interest, right? So I figured out, let's cut out the middleman. And so what Mike and I chose at that day, sitting at my kitchen table, is that we would travel around for once a month for 2 straight years, finding the best financial minds in the world. Now I wasn't married at the time, so it worked out pretty well. Although I was dating my now wife at the time, and that was where she said, if I have to hear the word velocity one more time, I don't know that we're going to be able to stay together. I'm a nerd for this. I love this kind of stuff. So I started sharing other things than just talking about opportunity cost and cost of money and velocity and those kind of things. That's why I can tell a few jokes here and there, because I've learned how to make her laugh. I told her I want to be a stand-up comedian. She said, no chance. I said, when I speak, people laugh. She's like, yeah, you're making them money. They're going to be pretty courteous. So I do appreciate the laughs here. It is helpful. So we went around once a month for 2 straight years. I remember the first place, we stayed at a New Jersey Red Roof Inn to learn from this guy out there that was a genius. And then we flew to Arizona. We just went everywhere and we're learning all this stuff. But that was part of when I went into, at 22 years old, learning from Vince about the Rockefeller-style family office. This is one of the most stratospheric, unique advantages anyone can have in legacy in their finances. Because Vince was proposing a $400 million strategy, and I was like, $400 million. If we combine everybody's net worth and price and times it by 40, I think we might get there at that time, right? So I'm sitting there, and he's presenting, and it's a conference room table. It's attorneys and accountants and investment advisors and cash flow specialists and risk management professionals. And this was the first time I'd ever seen the words due diligence come to fruition in the world of finance. You guys hear due diligence in finance all the time, right? Do due diligence, but if they're mutual fund salesmen, it's like Sasquatch. They talk about it all the time, but you've never seen it, right? It's like, so I'm sitting there going, this is fascinating. And so afterwards, I wasn't allowed to talk in the meeting. I said, Vince, what's this? He goes, this is a Rockefeller-style family office. Every financial professional is on the same sheet of music. They're all working from the same kind of orchestrated plan. They're doing real due diligence. There's fiduciaries in here. He said, this is how they kept their wealth together for so long. And that's what I started to get fascinated with studying. Now, first off, I was fascinated. But then I got pissed. Who in here is worth $50 million or more? Because that was the only way to get access to these firms. And so I made this, bold declaration. I'm going to build this for the working wealthy. I'm going to build this for the people that are building businesses, but they didn't come from big inheritances or anything like that. Thank you. And when I said that, I didn't realize how naive I was. That took over a decade to build. Attorneys that subscribe to the same wealth philosophy as the accountants that are willing to communicate with each other, an investment advisor that is willing to say real estate is the game and not, trying to sell a mutual fund, like getting there and selecting who are the best out there that aren't in New York or San Francisco so we don't have to pay 10 times the price for the same result. I found people in that network that when they were 9 years old started working in that field when their parents were in it. They were born for it. They love it. They're passionate about it. I found people that at 11 years old sat in meetings with Earl Holding, John Huntsman, Walt Disney, Frank Sinatra, because their grandfather was an attorney and they wanted to become an attorney. I looked for people that it was like an expression of who they were, that it was an expression of their sole purpose. And by building that over the decade, that has been the greatest strategic advantage to sustainable wealth, getting people's financial house in order in 1 year rather than over 30 years, and economic independence that you can achieve within 3 to 7 years rather than waiting for 30 years and finding out you're not going to get there. So, the third I is investments. If you have investments with fees, hidden commissions, non-cash flowing investments, it's going to slow your wealth down. If you had 100 grand that you could invest for 30 years, and it could grow to 1.74 million because you earn a 10% return year in and year out, that doesn't happen, but that's what they like to illustrate. You've seen those charts, right? Just on a mere 10%, it's not going to happen. But 1.7 million, that sounds so cool. Until you find out if you pay a 0.85%, less than 1% of a fee on that, it only grows to 1.4 million. So do you love your financial person $340,000 worth? Was the golf game or the sports thing they took you to worth that? There's so many hidden fees and commissions inside of that that confiscate people's wealth. And the last I is insurance. So I'll just give one example of one individual that loves to tell his story. His name's Mike. I mean, when we met Mike, first off, his insurance was, he'd never looked at it. It's just whatever the person sold it to him is how he had it. He had low deductibles, he had high limits, but didn't have an umbrella policy. So we freed up money by simply upping his deductible to a reasonable amount. Like, you're not going to make a $200 claim on insurance, are you, if you get in a fender bender? So why not just up it to the point where you might make a claim, like $500 or $1,000? And then we lowered his limits of liability, which protected him, but we added an umbrella policy, and we saved him money while getting him $2 million more of insurance. Saving money, staying with the same company just by policy design, right? The other thing, if we go back to the taxes, he had commercial real estate and had never done a cost segregation analysis. Cost segregation allows you to accelerate your tax deductions through depreciation.
I have an interview.
That saved him $10,000 a year on just taxes. He didn't set up a corporation. If you're a business and you don't set up a corporation, you're probably overpaying taxes. Because if you have even a single employee, you can get dividends or distributions that don't get hit with self-employment tax, which is 15.3%. So we set that up. That saved him another $10,000 a year moving forward. Then, every 3 years, you should go back and look with a different set of eyes, a new accountant, and find out, did you miss anything? Because if you've missed any deductions, you can amend those returns and get money back from the IRS. Look, I had 2 partners die in 2006. The one surviving partner is the guy that's about to come up here in just a couple of minutes. He's the one that called me that morning to let me know our plane had left St. George, Utah, and no one had heard from our partners. My first thought was disbelief, by the way. I thought, you know, Les is like a big kid. Like, we'd be doing a company retreat, he's throwing water balloons half the time. He's like a financial genius, right? Like, we'd be trying to get something done, he's out buying a 700 horsepower car so he could race it around. Him and Bob would have got along extraordinarily well. Brilliant and childish in the best of ways, right? That's why I think I love Bob so much. So, anyway, I finally turn on the news and find out that the plane had actually crashed into Utah Lake. And so I rushed down to one of the widows to start helping out, and Mike was the one that made that phone call, and we were able to get through that type of a situation. We were able to go 17, 18 years ago and tour around to figure everything out, and that's where I started coming up with the 4 I's, right? And this guy, when my partners died, I overpaid taxes that year by $54,000 because I didn't communicate with my financial team because it was chaos. I was trying to keep all 42 employees and do more than I could even handle. So we all have things that happen in life, whether it's a health challenge, a family issue, a busy time in business, that if we neglect anything or we don't get the data to our accountants, you can go back and amend your returns. Well, this guy, Mike, we amended his returns and got $102,000 back. I got $54,000 back. So this is money that is rightfully yours and for you to reclaim. We had him in retirement. He had retirement plans with huge fees, We figured out just under 5% by the time we looked at his 12B1 fees, his legal and administrative fees, his expense ratios of his funds. So we moved it to a self-directed IRA, which you guys all know about. We moved it to equity trust. It cost him $300 a year. That saved him tens of thousands of dollars over the last 7 or 8 years, right? All we did was go through the 4 I's, and the difference that it made was 6 figures every single year on a guy that was taking home $350,000. So we boosted his income by a higher rate of return than any mutual fund has ever done over that 8-year period of time, right? Guaranteed. So to this point, we've covered several things. Scarcity destroys wealth. Instead, what do you want to embrace? Abundance. You want to live abundantly. Spend time with abundant people. Have a vision that compels you. Have a purpose that outlives what normal people would call working years, so that even when you're older, you're still up to something amazing. You still feel like your future is greater than your past. Have you ever met that person that their future is no longer greater than their past? They're miserable. They're on their way to death. They complain. Always have that purpose. Have that vision higher than any problem you have, and you can get through it. Because you don't have to be able to implement the vision on your own. We live in a world of sharing and collaboration. You're in an amazing room of relationship capital right here, right now. People that are willing to embrace freedom. People that are willing to live with economic independence. People that are willing to say, I don't care what the mainstream media says. I don't care what the Depression era thinking that's been passed down from generation to generation. I'm going to break free from that mold. I'm going to do something different, because I talked about when I was with my grandfather touching the TVs he worked on, because he had a Zenith TV repair shop, and he'd say not to touch it. I'd touch it, get shocked. That's what entrepreneurs do. Those are the expensive lessons, rather than learning from what someone says. Oh, that hurts. Yes, right? But my grandfather was the first one that had some entrepreneurial sense to him within our family. He played the accordion and traveled around the country. He got, on the weekends in the band, he made money. Then, on the weeknights, he had a TV repair shop. He won awards for the Community Citizen of the Year in Sunnyside, Utah. There's not a lot of people there. But he won that, right? And I looked up to that. I'm like, look, people admire him. They respect him because he's creating value. No one was like, oh, that's James Aquino, the coal miner. We're like, no, that's Jim. That's my friend. He comes and helps us out. He takes care of our TV. We've gotten to know him. He's been in our kitchen. He gives us Italian olives because Italians show their love through the food, right? He brings us pepperoni and supersata and all this kind of stuff, right? And then they're giving that back to him. They're giving him tortillas. It's like, I'm watching this happen. It was relationships. But the relationships that mattered to him were especially his family, right? And you know what? That had a huge impact on me. Because he was my first client simply because he was a nice grandfather. What can I let my grandson do, and hopefully it won't hurt us too bad? Well, the good news is we got him completely out of the stock market after I faced him in 2000. We added an extra $250,000 tax-free to his estate upon death, and his home was worth $22,000 when he died, so think about that. My mom had a kidney transplant the year after they died, and her entire medical bills were paid for by that inheritance that didn't exist, and they had no worry about the stock market the last 16 years of their life. So I share these because my passion is to liberate 1 million people, to make sure that you have economic independence, that you choose a path where there's freedom, abundance, and most importantly, change your family's financial future and their destiny because there's legacy. That's why Mike and I got together and wrote What Would the Rockefellers Do? That's why we traveled every single month for 2 straight years. That's why I was the first call that he made when the partners went down in a plane crash and said, what can we do? How can we make this work? What can we give? And we probably gave a little bit too much for a little while of ourselves to try to bring all this together, right? But the bottom line is, he drove up this morning from St. George to be here, and I've teased you enough about this. I said I'd cover the 4 I's: IRS, interest, investments, and insurance. Reclaim that money. Financial savvy will get you there. This book will be part of that path to get there. But let me bring Michael G. Isom, my good friend, the accredited network, part of the Rockefeller system, coming to stage right now.
Thank you. Thank you. Why? Why, God, why? No, no, don't make me. Don't. No. No. I know that all of you have heard some amazing things, and I know that you're going to continue to hear some really amazing things by being here. But over the next 10 minutes, what I'm going to share with you is literally the gateway to changing your life and liberating yourself. You see, money is life, and money is death. And how you deal with money is either life or death. And you, each one of you out here today, you are your number one asset. Money is life, and you are your number one asset. If we don't have money in our life, life is death. When we have money, then we have life. Money creates the flow in our life for us to be able to exchange that Garrett talked about. And you, each of you, are the most important part of that equation in making it happen. You are your number one asset. It was this bathroom floor back here that I found myself on the fall of 2010, October, a Tuesday morning. I had a bloody nose, snot streaming out of my nose, bawling on the bathroom floor, questioning life itself, ready to end it all. As I watched my wife and our 2 kids leave our home with 2 U-Haul trucks because I wasn't healthy to be around. You see, money became death for me, not life. Oh, how quickly that turned for me. The end of '07, when I found myself losing over $4 million and a bad investment. You see, I had succumbed to what Garrett talked about, what the financial institutions taught and continue to teach to this day, that high risk equals high rate of return. I gambled and I lost. In that moment on the bathroom floor, I thank God to this day for the rush that came over my body and the commitment that I made to get healthy, first for myself and then for my family, to get my family back. And I did just that. And I committed myself to extracting the life lessons of what I had been through. And in that moment, that rush that came over my body, I knew what my life's purpose was all about. And it was to extract those life lessons so you never, ever, ever have to experience what I experienced the fall of 2010. Money is life. You are your number one asset, yet we devalue ourselves. And those around us devalue us. And when we devalue ourselves, we think the solution is somewhere outside of us. And we choose to relinquish control of our money versus maintain control, as if someone is going to be a wiser steward over your resources than yourself. That's why Garrett and I got together and we wrote, What Would the Rockefellers Do? That's why I created a financial firm called Vault AIS. AIS, number one asset. You are your number one asset, number one investment, and number one strategy. The agenda that Garrett talked about, financial institutions, all financial institutions, they want our money. They want to hold on to it they want to get our money on a regular basis. They want to hold on to it for as long as possible, and they want to pay it back to us as slow as possible. Every product and service they manufacture meets that agenda. It's no surprise. There's no conspiracy, okay? We get a benefit from these transactions. But if, like what Garrett talked about, if the financial institutions are doing it this way and they're teaching us to do it a different way, if it's good for them, why isn't it good for us also? So when I started extracting those life lessons and put what Garrett and I had been learning to work in my own life in a massive way, I started thinking, well, what are the most powerful financial institutions out there today? They're banks. They control the cash. And what would it take for me to become my own bank, to do these strategies that Garrett talked about, not only for myself and my life, but to help others with that too? Who here thinks that'd be a good idea? For sure, right? I'm happy to report that after 2 months of being away from my family the fall of 2010, I was able to regain what it took to be around my family. And I've never been closer to my wife and kids than I am today. And I've earned back every dollar that I lost. I'm so proud of the opportunity to have co-authored this book with Garrett. We put everything in here. We put everything in here. So you, just like myself and just like Garrett, but each of you can benefit. The tagline on here, how the wealthy get and stay that way. It's clear to me today, more than ever before, that the wealthy play by a different set of rules. Those rules are disclosed in this book, and each of you can benefit and utilize those in your own life to maintain control versus the oh so risky relinquished control. And by doing so, earn this high rate of return that Garrett talks about. You are your number one asset, and money is life. Here's what I want you to remember. I want you to remember in your core how important it is for you to maintain control and to choose life over death with your money. And more than ever before, see yourself as the number one asset and act that way and support each other in this group with that mindset. The second thing that I want you to do, I want you to make a list of the areas that you devalue yourself and go to work on them and assist each other. And if there are any team members or advisors around you that are devaluing you, I would encourage you, number 3, to fire them. You are your number one asset, and money is life. Thank you very much.
Look, we all have our stories, we all have our experiences, and we all have our great gifts. I just hope that you could fully embrace yours, and whatever's happened to you in the past, that you learn lessons from it, but you learn the right lessons. Because in closing, when I was in preschool, I had a pretty impactful day. I made the most beautiful little milk carton house. I got to drink my chocolate milk, so I chugged that chocolate milk down. And then I got the scissors, I cut a little, window and the door, and it was a beautiful house. And my house was brown and the chocolate milk was brown, so I was like, how cool is this? I'm gonna go show my mom how talented I am. And then the teacher, Miss Eckwright, said, no. We're gonna take the milk carton house and we're gonna put it up here on the shelf. You memorize your address. And once you memorize your address, you get it back. Well, I'm a little ADD. So I went home and forgot all about that. Played and then went to bed. Then the next day, half the people got their milk carton back. I was like, milk carton, yes, milk carton. So I went into the porch step the next morning, snow all around me, the green fake kind of like turf stuff that you could like wipe your feet on, you know, like almost rough, you don't want to put your hands on it, staring at 3 little numbers. 3, 1, 2. That's all, just 3, 1, 2. Okay, got it. Rush over to school. I get up there and I say 2, 1, 3. I'm a damned financial guy and I have a little slight case of dyslexia. I call the wrong numbers a lot, by the way. If it's not programmed in my phone, I just transpose some of them. So, all right, that's okay. There's still 2 milk cartons left. So I get my 3rd day. I get in there. I can't wait to, I got it. But the first person goes and they get their milk carton, so now I'm the only one left in the class without their milk carton home. And I wasn't a public speaker yet. I froze. And when I didn't get it right, she took the milk carton home, she pulled it down, and she says, "I'm sorry," and threw it away. In that moment, I said to myself, I am stupid. And I spent so much time in my life trying to prove otherwise. And that was good to a certain point because it drove me to learn a lot. It drove me to study. It drove me to start that business. But at a certain point, it kept me from being fully expressed. I would never be on a stage like this feeling that way. I'd never just tell people exactly or ask a question because is that going to make me feel stupid or sound stupid? I would never put writing in a book and put it out there into the world until finally I recognized I was 5 years old at that time. I'm 38 years old now. And I chose to have a conversation with that 5-year-old, and I said, Garrett, I'm okay, man. At first I said words like capable, and I realized my 5-year-old self wouldn't understand that, so I said, it's okay. We've grown up. It's going to be all right. I can handle it. I got this, buddy. And I looked at my 5-year-old picture while I was doing this, because I thought every time I say something negative about myself, or I don't put myself out there, I'm harming someone from getting economically independent, and as a matter of fact, I looked at it like I was yelling at that 5-year-old kid. So whatever happens in your life that holds you back, whatever happens where something in the past keeps you from having a compelling vision for the future, or if you don't dare to dream and embrace that dream, I want you to say something that is so great that you have no idea how to achieve it, but you're inspired to get there. In 1961, JFK came onto TV and he said, we're going to land a man on the moon and return them safely home within this decade. No idea how to do it, by the way. But guess what happened? People collaborated. They started doing something. They showed up. So anytime when I was like, I'm going to talk about sole purpose in finance, ooh, what will people think? That's like, oh, that 5-year-old buddy, I got it. It's okay. This is what we're going to do. And so I leave you with 1 million entrepreneurs to economic independence. You're part of that now. I'm putting that in your hands. Let's do it together. I'll give you all these resources. I'll be here for you, and I'll see you at the end of the conference out there. Thank you.